So I'm probably holding the two best tablets in the world, Apple's powerful 12.9-inch M2 iPad Pro and Samsung's massive Galaxy Tab S8 Ultra. I've had so much fun comparing these two top-of-the-line tablets. I use them for gaming, for watching video, for social media, general productivity, and as laptop replacements, and this ended up being a very close contest. Now, both companies make smaller tablets, so one of the reasons why you'd be looking at these is that you want a big and beautiful display. Now, if you've had the third, fourth, or fifth generation 12.9-inch iPad Pros, then this M2 version is going to feel very familiar in your hands. We'll get to the quality of the display in just a minute, but in terms of size, this is one of my favorite tablets. The Tab S8 Ultra is a first for Samsung in terms of size, and one of my concerns before I actually got it was whether it would feel too big and bulky. Well, it's still the biggest tablet that I've used to date, but ever since day one, I absolutely love this larger display. It's great when you're watching video or multitasking in landscape mode because you're really getting a ton of screen real estate. And even when you have it in portrait mode, it doesn't feel too narrow like some other smaller tablets with the same aspect ratio. The Ultra is also a little thinner than the iPad Pro, and another concern that I had was durability and the potential for bending. After almost 9 months of use, I've had absolutely no build quality issues with the Ultra. I've also had every 12.9-inch iPad Pro model until now, and none of them have had any bending issues, so I don't expect to have any with the M2 model. When we look at the overall design, both tablets have rounded corners, squared off edges. The Ultra has slightly smaller bezels, but it does have a notch which houses the front-facing camera. I've gotten a lot of questions about it, and I have to say that it's never been something that's bothered me. Like, of course, I would rather not have it, but it's not something that takes away from my user experience with the Tab S8 Ultra or with any of the MacBooks that have an even larger notch. So personally, I'm absolutely willing to have a notch if it means that I'm getting smaller bezels all the way around and a larger display in the same footprint. Now, I've said this about other devices as well, but if you're someone who's going to focus on the notch and you're going to look for it, you're definitely going to see it, and maybe the Ultra is just not the right device for you. Now, as far as ports, the Ultra has a USB-C 3.2 port, and the iPad Pro has a more powerful Thunderbolt/USB 4 port, which allows for faster file transfer speeds and more powerful accessories. For most users, this isn't going to make a practical difference. But for example, if part of your daily workflow includes transferring really big video files or a lot of photos, then it becomes a more meaningful advantage for the iPad Pro. Now, one of the best features of the Tab S8 Ultra is the micro SD card slot, which allows you to relatively inexpensively expand the internal storage by up to 1 terabyte. You can use the storage for files or for apps, and in my experience, the apps and games ran just as fast off of the micro SD card as they did off of the internal storage. Now, what about the actual quality of the display? Let's quickly look at the spec differences and then talk about how they impact real-life use. The Tab S8 Ultra has a monster 14.6-inch Super AMOLED display with a resolution of 1848 by 2960. It has up to 120 Hz refresh rate, a 16 by 10 aspect ratio, and a pixel density of 240 pixels per inch. The iPad Pro has a 12.9-inch Liquid Retina XDR display with a resolution of 2048 by 2732, 120 Hz adaptive refresh rate, a 4:3 aspect ratio, and a pixel density of 256 pixels per inch. Now, typically, I prefer the 4:3 aspect ratio because if two tablets have the same length, I'm getting a larger canvas in landscape mode. Like, personally, black bars at the top and the bottom don't bother me when I'm watching video. And I'm getting a more convenient shape in portrait mode for note taking because the display isn't as narrow. Now, in this particular case, because the Ultra is so much bigger, even in portrait mode, I still have plenty of width to work with. And in landscape mode, video looks so much bigger, and this is my favorite tablet so far for media consumption. In terms of image quality, both are outstanding, but there are some differences. So the iPad Pro is powered by mini LEDs. It has impressively accurate color reproduction, and it's better for viewing HDR content because it has 1000 nits of typical brightness and 1600 nits peak brightness. The Ultra has a Super AMOLED display. It's got bright and vivid colors and a beautiful sharp image with darker blacks. Now moving on, the Ultra gives you the option of choosing between 60 and 120 Hz, whereas the iPad uses Apple's ProMotion, which is a variable refresh rate. So the iPad can detect what you're doing and then select the optimal refresh rate in real time. It gives you a faster refresh rate for a smooth and responsive user experience when you need it, and then when you don't, it can lower the refresh rate to save on battery life. So I'm left with a very similar decision to the one that I had with the M1 iPad Pro. If I'm looking for the best image quality, dynamic range, and color accuracy, then I'm giving the edge to the iPad Pro. But the display that I'm most excited to use is the Tab S8 Ultra. The image quality is still outstanding, and the size of the display together with the form factor make it feel like I'm using some sort of futuristic display. Another important factor is biometric authentication, where the iPad Pro uses Face ID with its TRUEDEPTH front-facing camera. In my experience, it's been very accurate, it's secure, and it also works when I'm not sitting directly in front of the iPad and in low light situations, which is super convenient. The Tab S8 Ultra has face recognition and an on-screen fingerprint sensor. Now, both have worked pretty well for me. Facial recognition is not as secure or as reliable in low light as Apple's Face ID, but I do like the versatility of having both options for different situations. I was really hoping that Apple would bring the same power button fingerprint sensor that we have on every other iPad to the Pro model this year, but that didn't happen. Now, looking at the camera systems, the iPad Pro has a 12 megapixel ultra-wide TRUEDEPTH front-facing camera, and the Tab S8 Ultra has two 12 megapixel cameras, one wide and one ultra-wide. And here's a quick sample. Here's a test of the camera and microphone on the M2 iPad Pro and the Tab S8 Ultra. This should give you a pretty good idea of the type of image quality that you're going to get and the type of audio quality that you should expect. This is also going to show you the framing. So on the iPad Pro, right now I'm looking at the camera, which is located on the side. And right now I'm looking at the screen, and you can see that it looks like I'm looking off to the side. With the Tab S8 Ultra, right now I'm looking at the screen. Right now I'm looking at the camera. And again, the camera is positioned in the center of the long edge, so it always keeps me properly framed. Now, both tablets offer an auto tracking feature. Samsung calls it auto framing and Apple calls it center stage. Basically, both tablets use a combination of their ultra-wide camera and AI to identify a subject as it moves through the frame and then zoom in and out to keep it properly framed. In both cases, the feature works very well, and let me know which implementation looks better for you. Moving on to the rear-facing camera modules, on the Ultra, we're getting a 13 megapixel wide and a 6 megapixel ultra-wide versus a 12 megapixel wide and a 10 megapixel ultra-wide on the iPad. Both tablets have a flash, but the iPad Pro also has a LiDAR scanner. When it comes to tablets in general, image quality on the rear-facing camera is not really a deciding factor for me because I'm pretty much always going to use my phone. But if you're looking for the best image quality or you need a LiDAR scanner for AR or for anything else in your workflow, definitely get the iPad Pro. When it comes to the speaker system, these are now the two best sounding tablets that I've tested. In both cases, we're getting a 4-speaker system, and if you plan on using these speakers for media consumption or even for gaming, you'll be super happy with either one. Now, of course, if I'm playing something like PUBG, I'm always going to be wearing headphones. So it's really a close call here in terms of speaker quality, but the Ultra still sounds a bit fuller and a bit richer to me. So if you forced me to choose, I would give it a very narrow edge. Now, as far as battery life, I can get through a full day of typical use with both tablets unless I'm gaming a lot. But I find that the Ultra lasts me longer, and I like the fact that it accepts 45-watt charging versus 30 watts on the iPad. Now, the M2 iPad Pro only comes with a 20-watt charger, and the Tab S8 Ultra doesn't come with a charger at all, which brings me to today's sponsor, Basis, and these two charging accessories, one of which has a feature that I've never seen before. When I travel, I have a lot of devices with me, so I love having a 30,000 milliamp hour capacity and 5 output ports with this 65-watt fast charging power bank. It has one USB-C port and 4 USB-A ports, so I can charge up to 5 devices at once. And I love this new LED display. Now, what's super interesting about this power bank is that you can charge it using USB-C, micro USB, and even a lightning cable, which I've never seen on any other power bank. So regardless of which cable I have lying around, I know that I can always get this power bank ready to go. Now at my desk in my office, I'm using the Power Combo Pro 40 watts. I have 2 USB-C ports, 1 USB-A port, and there are 3 additional outlets, so this essentially can act as a power strip. And it also offers surge and 6 other types of protections to keep your devices safe. So if you're looking for super versatile charging accessories for your office or for when you travel, check out these 2 options for Bases. I'll have links in the description for you, and thank you to Bases for sponsoring this portion of the video. Now, the Tab S8 Ultra comes with the Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 chip, and the 128GB model comes with 8 gigs of RAM, 256 comes with 12, and the 512 gig model comes with 16 gigabytes of RAM. One of the few updates to the iPad Pro is the newer and more powerful M2 chip. And just like with the M1 model, the 128, 256, and 512 gigabyte models come with 8 gigs of RAM, and the 1 and 2 terabyte models come with 16 gigabytes of RAM. I want to quickly show you benchmark scores in case you're interested, and then let's go ahead and move on to real life use. So as you would probably expect, the iPad Pro pretty much crushes the Tab S8 Ultra for both single and multi-core performance. But does that actually translate into a meaningful real life advantage? Well, that depends. For most things, including multitasking, both tablets are quite capable. One UI and iPad OS have had some great updates over the past few years. You can run apps side by side in split view, you can have pop-up windows, and both tablets were able to do this while remaining fast and responsive. The iPad Pro, if you're using iPad OS 16 or later, has a feature called Stage Manager, which can do several useful things. First, you can use multiple apps simultaneously while creating app groups on the side. Next, you can connect an external display and have the iPad fill the entire display rather than having black bars on the left and the right like with previous versions. Then finally, you can extend the desktop to the external display rather than only having it mirror what's already on the iPad. At the time that I'm making this video, these features are still in beta, so the only way to use them is to install a beta version of iPad OS, which I wouldn't recommend if this is your primary device. Now, putting all that aside, this is a good step forward for Apple, but it doesn't quite feel like you're using a desktop. You don't have so much control over resizing and placing your windows, and the interface is not quite as useful as I was hoping for. If you're using the Ultra in tablet mode, you're able to run 3 tiled apps at the same time, and you can resize them to give each app as much room as you'd like. The Tab S8 Ultra can also boot up in Dex, which gives you a desktop-like user interface with a taskbar, floating windows, and desktop icons. You can even pair a keyboard, a mouse, and an external monitor for a more complete dual display setup. Apple has made some headway in terms of using the iPad as a laptop replacement, but with Dex, Samsung is still ahead if you're looking to get more of a laptop or desktop feel with your tablet. If you already have a desktop or a laptop, you can use both of these tablets as additional displays for your device. Now, Samsung calls this feature second screen, and Apple calls it sidecar. I would highly recommend learning more about this feature if you get one of these tablets. Both features work well as long as you have a strong Wi-Fi connection. Now, another important consideration is operating system support. So Samsung improved support on the Tab S8 lineup, and they're now promising 4 years of OS updates and 5 years of security updates. This brings Samsung closer to Apple, who offers outstanding long-term OS support, and iPad OS 16 will be the first iPad OS that is not compatible with my 2014 iPad Air 2, which actually admittedly still works great. Now, if you need specific apps for your workflow, there are so many great options in the Google Play Store, the Galaxy Store, or the Apple App Store. But some creative apps like Procreate and Affinity Photo are still only available for the iPad. So if those are the types of apps that you absolutely need for your workflow, you definitely need to go with the iPad. By the way, if you're looking for a good drawing app for the Tab S8 Ultra, check out Clip Studio Paint. In terms of video editing, LumaFusion is available for iPadOS, and there is a beta version available for Android in the Galaxy Store. Video editors will also be happy to hear that DaVinci Resolve is coming to iPadOS later this year. Now, if you're looking to do even more with either of these, you may want to consider a stylus and a keyboard case. The iPad Pro is compatible with the second generation Apple Pencil, which is great and costs an additional $130. The Tab S8 Ultra is compatible with Samsung's newest and fastest S Pen, and it comes included with the purchase of the tablet. It offers a hover indicator and it's Bluetooth enabled, so it provides a number of wireless features that are not available with the Apple Pencil. Now, one of Apple's upgrades this year was adding a hover mode to the M2 iPad Pro, and that adds an indicator of where the Apple Pencil is located, as well as some interactive UI elements, and it'll be interesting to see what iPadOS app developers do with this feature. Now, both stylus options work really well, but each one of them has a completely different feel. So the tip of the S Pen is softer, and when you write with it, it's going to feel more like you're writing with a real pen on a pad of paper where the pages compress as you press down. The Apple Pencil has a more firm tip, and it feels like you're writing on a single sheet of paper that's placed on a hard surface. Now, one is not necessarily better than the other, it's just a completely different feel. Moving on to keyboard cases, the iPad is compatible with Apple's Magic Keyboard and several other great third-party options. The Tab S8 Ultra is compatible with Samsung's Ultra book cover keyboard. Now, both Apple and Samsung keyboards offer backlit keys and a trackpad, but they feature completely different designs. The Ultra book cover keyboard has a dedicated row of useful function keys, a bump out on the back to protect the S Pen when it's charging or during transport, and the keyboard can be separated from the back so you can still protect the Tab S8 Ultra when you're using it in tablet mode. The Magic Keyboard is much more solidly built. It has a better trackpad. I prefer the feel of the keys, and it has pass-through power, but there's no protection for the Apple Pencil, and it's a single piece, so there's no protection for the iPad if you remove it from the keyboard. And when it comes to gaming, both tablets have been able to run all the games that I regularly play without any problems. So that includes PUBG, Genshin, COD Mobile, Asphalt, and then of course, less demanding games weren't going to be an issue. When playing PUBG on both tablets, you can go to HDR with frame rate set to extreme, or you can go to Ultra HD for graphics and Ultra for frame rates. Now, I haven't been able to set the M2 iPad Pro to 90 FPS yet, but just like when the M1 model was released, I'm sure that this feature will come with one of PUBG's future updates. Now, both tablets are extremely powerful, so gameplay was responsive and lag-free. I do want to reiterate that these are big tablets, and if you play games by holding them up, they can become heavy and they might be uncomfortable for users with smaller hands. Now, even though I was able to play every game on both tablets, I'm still going to give the edge to the iPad Pro because there's additional headroom in terms of processing power. And as game developers start creating even more demanding games than what we have right now, the iPad will be a better fit for longer. I also streamed games on both devices by pairing one of my Xbox controllers and then using the Xbox Game Pass app. Gameplay was great as long as I had a solid Wi-Fi connection, but I'm going to give the edge to the Tab S8 Ultra because the larger display was more fun to play on. Now, it's also important that we look at the configuration and pricing for both tablets, and I'm going to use the prices from the Apple and Samsung stores because they're standardized, but you can usually find better prices by using the links in the description. So both tablets start out with 120 gigabytes of internal storage and 8 gigs of RAM. The iPad Pro sells for $1099 and the Tab S8 Ultra sells for $999, and it includes an S Pen. The Tab S8 Ultra maxes out at 512 gigabytes of internal storage, while the iPad Pro can go all the way up to 2 terabytes. And remember that you can use a micro SD card with the Tab S8 Ultra if you want additional storage for files, apps, or games. Now you should watch this phone comparison. Click on my face to subscribe. You know what I always say, buy it nice or buy it twice. Good luck and see you soon.